Great. All right, so let's get started. Today it's going to be all about QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop and remote access tools. There's several reasons why people choose QuickBooks Online and several reasons why people choose QuickBooks Desktop. And we're going to kind of explore those reasons and we're going to get into some of the technicalities about them. All right, so the agenda for today is we'll talk a little bit about QB Power Hour, about the host, about the guest, some announcements and adjustments. For the topics, we're going to have guest speaker Woody Adams from Intuit, and he's going to walk us through some QuickBooks online features that are not available in QuickBooks Desktop. And hopefully, you'll learn at least something new today about QuickBooks Online. I know I will for sure. Woody's a fantastic speaker and an awesome employee for Intuit, knows everything about QuickBooks. Well, not everything, but and then I will cover QuickBooks Desktop features that are not available in QuickBooks Online. And then we'll have our guest speaker, Chris from Qbox. And he designed, or this company designed, the best file sharing collaboration tool for QuickBooks Desktop. And we're going to know why. You're going to see exactly how that works. And then we're going to have a guest speaker with MyQuickCloud, Stephen from MyQuickCloud. He's going to talk to us about self-hosting. So setting up a remote access solution for QuickBooks Desktop so people can self-host. So Michelle Long is one of the co-hosts. She couldn't be with us today. So I wish her a safe flight, and maybe I'll talk to her in a couple of hours. So in replacement of Michelle, we'll have Woody talking to us about the QuickBooks Online topics. I am a CPA. I work and live in Miami, Florida. I have my own tax and accounting practice. For the most part, I do QuickBooks training and some Excel training. The main sponsors for the show are Michelle Long and myself. However, we have vetted sponsors for specific apps that work best with QuickBooks or add on to QuickBooks, and they're almost always really relevant to our crowd, to our viewership here. And we're not sponsored by Intuit in any ways. However, from time to time, we'll have guest speakers like Woody to cover announcements and specific product features. So CPE process, you need to attend the entire webinar for at least 50 minutes. You need to write down the CPE password that we're going to give somewhere in the middle of the webinar. Make sure you write that down. At the end of the webinar or towards the end of the webinar, we're going to ask for that keyword, and please give us about 3 weeks to mail them out. Okay, some announcements. There is a link for the bit.ly link for the 2005 rates. Michelle is still compiling all the rates for accountants and QuickBooks consultants, and we're going to publish averages based on different services, and it's going to be really helpful for everybody to know, what rates are being charged out there. So please click on that link and fill out the survey. If you're in Houston or Dallas, Texas, go to bit.ly QBO Cert July and register for the QBO Cert Prep if you want to be certified with QuickBooks Online. I believe it's Bryce Forney and Katie Peterson who are teaching those classes. Now, the biggest QuickBooks related event of the year is going to be QuickBooks Connect, November 2nd to the 4th in San Jose. Check it out. They've announced a whole bunch of great main stage speakers, some great celebrities, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Last year was incredible. This year should be just as well. And if you want to join SleaderCon, go to SleaderCon.com, November 16th to the 19th in Las Vegas. The biggest accounting technology conference that is about mixed technologies, not just QuickBooks. And we're going to have a QB Power Hour live session, our first live in front of a stage session there. So make sure to come check us out. All right, so I'm going to give the stage to Woody Adams from Intuit. Woody, I'm going to go ahead and give you the stage so you can introduce yourself.
Awesome. No, it's great. I'm in it as an attendee, not an organizer, so that's why. But thanks for having me. First time ever on QB Power Hour, so really excited about that and happy to try to fill some shoes of Michelle just for today. Yes, and quick shout out, I think Dave Bergstein's in the audience. I'm going to turn my webcam off when I go into product just because, I'm at the office, a lot of people walking back and forth, and I didn't want anybody to distract you. There's a big meeting going on behind me. But essentially, I've been with Intuit 10 years, and I go to a lot of conferences. Hopefully I've talked or I've met all of you over the years. Hopefully I was nice and respectful when I was talking with you and kind as well. So I also am a part of the QB show, or formerly Radio Free QuickBooks with Don Brolin and Stacy Kildall. So anyway, I'm going to go in and talk about QuickBooks Online. It's going to be some specific things. I'm going to turn off the webcam now, and then I'm going to show my screen. All right. So some things that it's funny, Hector asked me yesterday, and I was actually doing some videos for something else that I can't really talk about, but and so he asked, because Michelle was on the plane, can you come in and do some stuff on QBO? Because typically it's, for this kind of an engagement or event, Michelle will handle the QBO side, and of course Hector will do the desktop, though he does a lot with QBO as well. So we were thinking, what things do you want to show? What are some of the advantages of QBO? Things that are not in desktop, and my thing is, well, if they want to be mobile and online and you don't have to deal with file transfer and things like that, then there you go. I mean, that's kind of my swaying argument for QuickBooks Online. But this morning, I got here a little early and was going through and trying to think of things, and I had my desktop product open, and I had QBO Plus open. So I was just kind of picking away, and I got this list, which I have tweeted. If you want to follow me at QBClay, I throw out a lot of content, and I retweet a lot of Hector's content and vice versa. So at QBClay, which makes absolutely no sense, and I'm not going to explain it because we don't have enough time for that. But because my name's Woody. But anyway, so I've been going through all of these lists of things that actually QBO does better. So I'm going to start showing some. But they're small things to also maybe some larger things with particularly the automation with transactions. But the list is getting longer. Leon's getting larger. If you guys, one of my favorite movies of all time, Airplane, remember that quote? So we're going to go and look at a few of these things. Hector's got a lot to go to, Qbox and the other stuff, as well as desktop. So I probably only got about 15 minutes or so. So I'm going to just quickly go through them at a high level, and then I will hang out while Hector's going. And if Hector wants to give me the organizer privileges, I'm happy to take on the Q&A all the way up till 12 Central. So just let me know.
Okay, well, I made you organizer, and we still can't see the screen. Oh, now we can. Okay.
Oh, how about now?
Yep.
Good?
Got it.
Okay. And no one else has a trial like mine, 1,765 days for free. So a little thing, just on the home page, even though I know you can kind of hide balances on the home page and desktop, it's really easy to toggle it on and off within QBO. Now, I'm in through QBOA, but none of the stuff I'm showing you today is actually just for accountants. If you're here as a small business owner, you're not an accountant or don't have one, I would encourage you to get a pro advisor like Hector or Michelle or several other people that are here in the audience today, because I believe that someone's QuickBooks is always going to be infinitely better if you have a pro advisor. So I'm in through QBOA. That's why you see the QB accountant in the upper left. That being said, the stuff I'm showing you, the private mode or Starbucks mode, as we call it internally, that's for everybody. Also, the mobile app. I can't show you that. I got to figure out that arrow thing, but to show the phone. But you can once you have a QuickBooks Online subscription, you can download QuickBooks. You just go to the App Store and search QuickBooks, download it. It doesn't have all the features, right? But you can see a P&L balance sheet, the items list, chart of accounts. You can do some sales transactions in one expense transaction. You can take a picture, and it'll send it in with the picture attached, as well as you can now do online banking on the phone. Auto send transactions. So if I go to the gear icon, recurring transactions. Now, for those of you desktop champions, this is memorized transactions, right? Nearly similar in functionality. But the ability, if I drill into this invoice here and click Edit, you have the option to automatically send the email on both invoices or sales receipts. And so in desktop, I still have to go to File, Send Forms, right? Or click Send from the top icon bar of the invoice or the sales receipt. The other thing I like is the ability to include unbilled charges. So if I have, and that goes to a delayed charge form, which I'll show as well, or delayed credit. If I have any of that or any time material expense that's tagged to a customer, and I have this recurring invoice set to go every month, right, then that invoice is going to pick up any unbilled charges. Though I think that's cool, it's important that if your client wants to be able to control what time material expense goes to an invoice from the drawer, and I think we can show that from an invoice a little bit later, you don't want to check this box, right? So you know your client, which you do, and are they going to be able to handle that? Along with the auto send transactions, there is a really cool report that I could not find in desktop for the similar thing. You have the memorized report list, but and it's actually an accountant report, though I'm not sure why. Recent automatic transactions. So this will be all your transactions that were created automatically. whether they're delayed charges, bills, checks, whatever, recurring transactions. So, and what people will do is they'll customize this report. And if you save the customization, let's just say, and I have one transaction there, but let's say you save the customizations, and we'll call it, what is this, weekly, okay? Like this is what Stacy does. She actually will add it to a group, as you guys, I'm sure you can know. You add it to a group, and that's part of, like, quote unquote, memorizing the report. And then I have my custom reports. Now I can actually then set this, or just add it to its own group if you want, because this, I'm going to schedule it to auto send. So auto send transactions, but I can also auto send report groups or my custom report groups. So also, though desktop has the ability to process multiple reports, and this year we added the functionality in desktop, be sure you see it, where you can batch send reports, right? There's a column to check off other things, other reports, not just one. But you still have to initiate the event, the happening, right? It going out of desktop. In QBO, I can schedule it, the group, and you schedule the actual group, and I can set it to go out to anybody, and it's a similar intervals to transactions, right? So you just choose weekly or whatever, and then they'll get all the transactions that were automatically entered in QBO. So desktop doesn't have that visibility, so I wanted to mention that as well. Now, there's also another thing in settings regarding automation of unbilled activity. If you go to the Advanced tab, there is this automation here, and it's really automatically invoice unbilled activity. Again, if this is turned on, and this is one you have to think of, do I really want this turned on or not? Because my client, in this case, any kind of unbilled activity, whether it's delayed charges or where I've been on, let me duplicate. Let me just kind of give an idea so I'm not just theorizing so much. Like, let's say I had, a delayed charge. Oh, one other thing I like better than desktop, the clock in the upper left of any transaction, this actually does what the previous button in desktop never did. It actually works, right? You ever on a transaction in desktop, you can click previous and it goes to like a transaction from 2003? Yeah, exactly. There's no rhyme or reason. It's a rogue feature in desktop, the previous next button. Anyway, recent transactions will take me to the last 10, and then you can run a report. It brings you basically to like the list report for all transactions where you can filter. So this delayed charge is tagged to, this customer. That's going to go to the invoice, and if I have this setting set, an invoice is going to be created, every week, let's say, and it's going to pick up any delayed charges plus any kind of expense or bill or credit card expense or journal entry that I tag to the customer. It's just going to dump it on the invoice. So it's important to know, do you really want that? And that goes for automatically apply credits and bills, which desktop has too, those two preferences. But, do you really want them turned on? Okay. So I wanted to point out that. Now, that's pretty much it for automation. Let's quickly go to bank feeds. I'm going to click done here. And a couple things that I want to show in bank feeds, and Hector reminded me of this. And he was correct in saying that, no, I don't know everything about QuickBooks. Maybe I did at one point. No, even when I thought I did, I didn't. But now that I'm older and wiser, I know less than I thought. And so I actually look up to Hector for that in that respect and what Michelle are doing. So he reminded me about this. And desktop has bank feeds, has online banking and that kind of stuff. However, there's a couple things that QBO bank feeds does that desktop doesn't. When you add a bunch of transactions to, the register, right? Everything's green, it's matched, I'm just going to accept selected, and desktop can do that too. But when you go into QuickBooks tab, see, I love how, desktop online banking doesn't do this. It doesn't break it out. It's just a transaction list, right? And if you accept them, even in batch, what if I did them wrong? Well, now I can undo here without going to the register and deleting them. I just click batch, undo, and that's going to bring them out of the register back into the new transaction field. Okay, and there's my 5 back under recognize. Why they're recognized? Because, well, I have some rules applied and some matching going on. But, rules are there in desktop too. The other thing, though, QBO does better than desktop for rules is that let's go into a rule here, you can do a split by percent. So let's say I have this rule here for Big B, whatever it is. Stacy probably created this one. And it's, we'll pretend it's like a check, okay? I can do a split by percent. So I could do, percent's going to be 50 going to this account and 50 going to another. That is not something that desktop can do. You can add rules, but you can't split it out by accounts. Also, what else can I do here? I can set a default class and location. Speaking of which, then desktop can't do that in the online banking. So there you go. How do you like them apples? Speaking of which, though, is Macintosh. Speaking of which, the location tracking, right? That is also not in desktop. It is another kind of list. It's this at the summary level of the transaction, so all the invoice, all the sales receipt, all the check, all of it, or the whole amount will go to the location. So it's another way to differentiate your P&L, or even people use it for a balance sheet, because we know how the balance sheet by class in QuickBooks is just it's just never really worked out, right? Because of source and target rules, and heck, Hector and I could do a whole QB Power Hour on that. Maybe we should put it on the calendar, Hector. But in QBO still has some similar source versus target, but not as rigid as desktop. So location tracking, balance sheet by location, is really an awesome balance sheet by class, and I learned that trick from Laura Redmond, so that's really cool too, just to throw that out there as well as a tip. So location tracking would be the summary of an invoice. So if I were to go to, say, you know, a check, and we'll go to a recent check, like this. Well, let's do one that actually, let's add some more lines. Let's do like one like this, and we'll see. It has other lines. Well, anyway, the whole 14 grand will go to Texas. However, 10 grand is going to, you know, the particular class like audit, and then the other 4 grand is going to another account, and then, you know, so the class tracking will allow me to split it out by classes. So when I run a P&L by class, I would see it broken out, you know, 4,000 in books column, 10,000 in the audit column. But the whole 14 grand is going to the summary of, you know, the location tracking. And location tracking, you can change the names. It's also a preference. So if I cancel out of here and go to, let me go here. There we go. Back to home. Here we go. Sorry, lost my place. If I go back to company settings and you go to company and then categories, you know, you can call category location something else, right? There's several different terms you can use for it. So now you have this other level of class tracking, that it's the summary level. So that's important to know. Like, what am I going to use, class, location, or both? And then we have default reports for that. We might as well go to reports next, because I have some things to show in reports. One other thing quickly before I go. So that was the online banking benefits. The reconciliation, I like this history window. Again, there's no discrepancy report. I mean, Hector can show you, or Stacy can show you a cool trick to run a report on the auto adjustments, because it makes a memo of like reconcile adjustments. You can filter like transaction list by date by the memo field, you know, or match, or whatever. I think it's called match. But I like seeing the grid, and I can drill down, and I can do the undo right from here when I'm in from QBOA. So that is, though there's no discrepancy report, I do like the history of seeing that history there right from one window and without having to run a report. Another thing too, and Hector, just let me know on time, because I've been all morning, I was like, hey, there's also something here. What about budgets? You can only do one budget per fiscal year in desktop.
Yeah, Woody, we'll do a part 2.
That's cool. Let me know when I need to stop. But kind of lame that you can only do fiscal year one budget fiscal year in desktop. In QBO, you can do multiples, right? So I have all of these budgets are actually 2014, right? So there's that also. And then just reports, Hector, and I'll end it there. Redesigned reports, which you can turn on in QuickBooks Labs. There's many things actually in QuickBooks Labs. You can now, Pro and Premier can't add a picture to an item. I know Enterprise can, but you can now in with QB Labs when it's turned on. There's a commerce network to have customer vendor information auto updated by the customer vendor without them pinging QuickBooks. And there's several other things being able to that aren't in desktop. But like these reports, right? So they're looking different even from desktop reports, but I can affect the logo right here. I can add endnotes right from here by clicking endnotes. And there's an ability, you know, obviously just kind of customizing the report while being on the report, including if I want to filter, like you can in desktop, but I'm on the report, not in some separate window. So those are things to consider as well. And then when you're on a detail report or a transaction report, you know, if you click the little baby gear icon, you have all of these columns that I can turn on and off while being on the report instead of being on that customized window. So I think that's a little advantageous as well versus reporting in desktop. And then one more, Hector, would be the journal entry, more than one ARAP per journal entry. And I'll end with the management reports. You can actually build a report compilation from cover page down to endnotes. You know, put a default header footer without having to use Word and stuff or Statement Writer. This isn't customizing reports. This is building a report package. So that is not in desktop. And then, of course, all accountants love the more one ARAP per journal entry. And that's enough probably, huh? Because it's a lot of info, but a lot more than I thought, right? So Leon's getting larger. And Hector, thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Woody. By the way, thank you for leaving no time for me to talk about desktop. It's very, very Intuit of you, by the way. Anyway, Woody, you obviously love QBO, and you're obviously talking about it with a lot of conviction. Do you think everybody should move to QBO?
No. No, I think if you need, like the stuff you're going to show, but heavier inventory and job costing, and you don't want a third-party app, you still stay on desktop, unless you want to be mobile or flexible. I love your bit of having all your service companies on QBO. I think that's genius, or nonprofits, or doctors, or dentists, or people on the go. But no, I mean, obviously, we're still investing heavily in enterprises, you know.
Exactly.
So, yeah, sure.
All right, thanks, Woody. So, in the presentation PDF link that I put in the bottom, we have all these slides that actually walk you through every single feature that's on QBO that's not on QuickBooks Desktop beyond what Woody covered, which you can see on the screen here. And it's very neat and very exciting to see QBO get better and better and better. But let me talk about QuickBooks Desktop now. Let me talk to my baby, the one that I've been using for a very long time. Some high-level differences, like what Woody was saying, is QBO is on the cloud, QuickBooks Desktop is not. Now, anytime we have inventory, manufacturing, contractors, job costing, I automatically think of QuickBooks Desktop. Yep, there's third-party tools out there that can fulfill those needs, but from nostalgia perspective, I think I still like desktop. Also, one of the high-level things that people think about quite often is the issue of price, right? With QuickBooks Online, you're going to pay a recurring price forever. And with QuickBooks Desktop, you pay a one-time fee every 3 years because of the banking feature, download banking features. And people think about cost a lot. And people also, they need to also think about the desktop is cumbersome, right? Because you need to have all Windows machines. It's complicated to get Macs to connect to QuickBooks. So there's a lot of really important pieces to think about that actually give credit to desktop and online in mix. So this is not a debate to see which one's better. This is more of having an in-depth, comprehensive understanding on what is the best recommendation. Inventory related, we actually referred to 2 weeks ago, the last Power Hour. We went into heavy detail about inventory features, and we talked about features in Pro, features in Premier. We talked about features in Enterprise and Enterprise Advanced Inventory. This is all from 2 weeks ago, so check out that recording. And then we spend a lot of time talking about average cost and FIFO. So when it comes to inventory, it's extremely obvious that QuickBooks Desktop is just a much stronger product today, right? The other piece to talk about is contractor and job costing. And payroll job costing is the biggest one. So when we talk about taking paychecks and taking job costed timesheets and sending them to jobs, and that's the area where QuickBooks Desktop really works really, really well. And we're going to do a whole episode on detailed payroll job costing, just because if we do it really briefly, we won't get time to get into the real details. Now, estimates versus actual report, back in November, we did a QB Power Hour. We talked about that. We have things like progress invoicing, change order notes, and estimates. That's not in QuickBooks Online, only on QuickBooks Desktop. There's expenses not assigned to jobs report. So this is any time that you want to look for expenses that were not assigned to a customer to see if there was a failure by the bookkeeper to job cost it. We have cost to complete report, job status report, estimate to PO work orders to subcontractors. I mean, the list gets really big when it comes to contractor and job costing. So it's not just inventory, it's also contractor and job costing. The other little things to think about that QuickBooks Desktop can do really, really well is customization of templates. I have tons of clients in Miami, and the invoices are all 100% in Spanish. I can't do that in QuickBooks Online. With QuickBooks Desktop, I can certainly do that. Sales order is a huge differentiator. Sometimes the operation of a business needs to separate an estimate from a sales order, which is a order, like an actual order that was taken, a non-posting order. So that really changes the workflow of many companies. And not having that in QBO to me is a big issue. If sales order was in QBO, my mindset would change so fast and so quick. That feature, sales orders, ability to condense, do period copies and backups, not available in QBO. That's people that like desktop hold on to that. Add, edit multiple names. We did at least 2 episodes where we talked about importing data from Excel, batch enter transactions, same exact thing, not in QBO, and it really, really optimizes my workflow. But one area that's really dear to me is reporting. To me, custom reporting is such a big deal. And I'm going to just switch over to QuickBooks Desktop real quick and talk about the reporting features that are just much more powerful in QuickBooks Desktop. So I'll start by going into the Customer Center. And one of my favorite things to do is to right-click here on this area for the customers and click on Customize Columns. And what I like to do is find out which information is really relevant to my client. So in this particular case, customer type and job status, which I basically grabbed from the left side here. So when I find job status or customer type, so for example, let me look for customer type, I grab it from the left side and I put it on the right side. Well, so what I like to do is give my client a dashboard, right, of all their jobs and where they stand. And job status is also a huge thing. Job status is when we double click on any job and we click down here to where it says job info, we give it a status. That's what job status is. Now, to customize this even further, customization to me is a really big deal for my clients too. We can go to the edit menu, we can go to preferences, and then down here under jobs and estimates, we'll click on company preferences. I can actually give these different names. Now, unfortunately, I only have 5, but I really like being able to customize it. So I have clients that manufacture in stages. So they'll do stage 1, stage 2, right? That's how they work. Stage 3, stage 4, or let's say this is we'll call it not started, and then we'll call this one complete. So I have clients that basically have 3 stages of processing a job and then they complete it. So what's cool about that terminology is that now I can go to any job here and change the status. Now reports, right? So I'm going to go to the reports menu. I'm going to click on industry specific. I'll click on contractor report, and then I'll go ahead and click on job status. So when I click on job status, and this is not available in Pro, only Premier and Accountant and Enterprise, of course. So when I click on job status, I actually get a report view of all my jobs and their statuses. And what's really cool about this particular report, it actually behaves different than most QuickBooks reports. If I double click on any of these, it takes me straight to the edit menu where I can actually change the status, right? Because that's logical, right? That I'm going to change it. The other way I like to sort of massively update my jobs is to go into the list menu, click on add, edit multiple list entries. And one of the things that I do is I click up here where it says customize, and I make sure that I add, for example, job status or customer type. And I'll talk about customer type in a second. So I'll add job status and customer type. And then from this screen, I can quickly update. Okay, so this one is complete, and this one is on stage 2, and this one is complete, and so forth. So by doing this, I can click on save changes, and then it'll automatically close and update my report to have the new job statuses. But where this could be really powerful is to do filters. So let me show you. Let me, for example, I'm going to do a filter here, and I'm going to go to reports, custom reports, and I'm going to click on summary. And this is a real powerful piece of reporting. Under rows, I'm going to click on customer type, and I'm going to give you some background in terms of how I use customer type in certain situations. So rows, I'm going to put customer type. Under columns, I'm going to put quarter because I just kind of want to see quarter information. Then under filters, I'm going to go ahead and only show sales. So I'm going to go ahead and filter that and only show income. So I'm going to click on all ordinary income. And then here on display dates, I'm going to put this fiscal year. So what's really neat about this, I can actually this is what I called my marketing effectiveness report, where I can actually see my sales based on customer type. And the way I use customer type for many of my clients, and I'm gonna show you kind of how I did that. So I went to the customer menu. I'm gonna go to here, customers, and I click on every single customer. I double click on the customer, and then here under additional info, under customer type, I tell it where I got the client from. Did I get them from the internet? Was it a YouTube campaign? Was it a referral from a client? Was it Yellow Pages? So I use customer type as a way of creating what I call my income by referral source report. So I'm going to go ahead and memorize this and call this income by referral source report. Okay, and this basically gives me a good understanding of how effective or how well my marketing is working. So it looks like my YouTube campaign is working quite well. And by the way, that's true. I do tons of YouTube campaigns and I get tons of leads from there. So it's actually pretty congruent with my own business. Tons of business coming from YouTube and Google Ads and stuff like that. So this gives you a really good insight, strategically speaking, on what are the things that you should be doing marketing wise to improve the business. Now, to take it one step further, to use this both job status and customer type factors, I'm going to click on Customize Report and go to Filters, and then I'm going to go down to Job Status. And let's say, for example, I'm only interested on jobs that have been closed. So for the time being, I'm not really that interested in seeing jobs that haven't been marked as closed in the job status. So it gives me an entirely different report, different information, right? I mean, so this is the real powerful part of QuickBooks reporting. And this is not advanced reporting. This is just the regular reporting features available in QuickBooks Premier and Enterprise. And well, Pro as well, but the job status, I think the first report is not available in QuickBooks Pro.
Another part I really like about QuickBooks Desktop is the whole customization of workflow. So let me go to the home page here real quick and kind of show you the premise of what I'm talking about. Let's say, for example, I start taking in an order and I record an order with a sales order, something that I don't have in QuickBooks Online, but I have in QuickBooks Premier and above. And I want to take a sales order for something I'm selling to a client, but I'm going to subcontract that work. So I'm going to go ahead and click on sales order here. And I can have multiple templates. It's one of the real cool things about this. I can have multiple templates. And let's say I want to call this sales order here. I'm going to call it order acknowledgement. And I can actually call it whatever I want. Because as part of my workflow in my industry or whatever, order acknowledgement is the typical wording that we use to record an order. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and book an order acknowledgement for this particular project here, this customer, this project. And what I'm going to do is I want to create a series of items that are tied to a vendor. And by that I mean they're items that I exclusively use to contract a vendor for that work. So for example, let's say I want to go to the vendor center here while I have the sales order open. And then I have a vendor here called Miami Contractor. Let's just call it that. So we'll call it here Miami Contractor. And Miami Contractor is somebody that we're going to use as a subcontractor for work. So there's Miami Contractor. And I'm going to go to my item list here. I'm going to click on List and Item List. And I'm going to create a new item here. I'm going to create a new service item. And I'm going to make that service item a hourly contract labor. Okay, and we'll point this to one of our consulting income accounts. And the key component here, I have to make this item a double-sided item by clicking on this service is being used in assembly or performed by a subcontractor. And I want to make the preferred vendor, in this case, that Miami Contractor. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. But the key component here is, I have to make sure I select an expense account. So there's a subcontracted labor cost. And I'm going to hit OK. But the key here is I'm going to use one item called hourly contract labor, another one called total contractor materials. So I'm going to click another one here. I'm going to make it the exact same thing. I'm going to make it a service. And then I'm going to call it contractor materials. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to click on this little same checkbox here, and I want to put here under cost, I'll just put 1, under sales price, I'll put 1, Later on, I'll explain why I'm putting the 1 there, but that's really an important piece. And I'm going to have that go into subcontract labor costs as well, because I'm just kind of going to lump sum the materials for the subcontractor, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick my default vendor there, Miami Contractor. And the income account for this one, I'll pick the same income account I have when I charge my client for the consulting. Let's say these are small and we really don't break down materials and labor, but just for the purpose of having the same account there. So I'll hit OK. So now I have 2 items in there, but now I want to group them. I'm going to show you what I mean by grouping them. I'm going to go to an item, I'm going to click on new, and then I'm going to create a service item, and I'm going to put here Miami Contractor. So I'm using the contractor's name. I'm using the contractor's name to create a general item here, and I'm really not going to hit that little checkbox. I'm going to put in the description here, do not use, because I'm not really going to use that item, and I'll show you in a second what I mean by that. So let me go back to my hourly contract labor. I'm going to go ahead and click on edit, and then I'm going to make that a sub account, or a sub item, sorry, not a sub account, a sub item of that Miami contractor group. There it is, okay? And then I'm going to look for my contractor materials, which is right here. I'm going to edit that one and make that one part of my same group here, or my same item as a sub item. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to make sure that both of these items, which now are sub items, both of these items are pointing to Miami Contractor. And this one, let's say, for example, I charge my client typically $90 an hour, and I pay my subcontractor $45. So this is just part of the setup. Not really the funnest part of it is a setup, but once it's set up, it works pretty well. And then I'm going to create now a group, a new item here, item type group, where basically I'm going to put all those items together into a single one. So I'm going to put here this one called Contractor, and I'll put here Miami Contractor Corp, whatever code I want to use. And then here under item, I'm going to go ahead and break these down and put here contractor labor, and then I'll put here the second one, which is contractor materials. And this stuff's going to make sense very, very soon. So I created the 2 items. I made them preferred vendor to my Miami contractor vendor. I created the item, and I created the sub items, and I created a group. Now this becomes really powerful as part of your workflow, because as a QuickBooks user, you want to be able to put your orders together really, really fast. So my client calls, they make the order for some consulting work that we're going to go ahead and subcontract. So I'm going to click on item here, and I'm going to look for that group that I created that's already pre-set up for me. There it is. And basically my 2 items come in as default, which is great. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about the groups. And then here, this is the rate that I'm going to charge my client. And let's say I'm going to charge my client for 15 hours worth. And then the materials, and this is key here, just because this rate here doesn't transfer over on the contractor side, but the amount order does. So here on the rate, I'm going to leave that at 1. And let's say, for example, I expect to spend about $500 in materials. So this is my total order. Here in the description, I'm going to put here total order consulting fees. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click preview just to kind of get an idea for what it looks like for the client. It's just one line item that says total order consulting fees $18.50. The client gets an order acknowledgement form for what they asked, but us internally, we know that we have a breakdown here of materials and hourly contract labor. And this is going to make tons of sense in a second, because this is the part of the workflow that QuickBooks Online doesn't have, that QuickBooks Premier and Enterprise have, that I think is superb. So, we give the client the order acknowledgement, they agree, they sign, whatever it happens to be. And then what we do is we click on Create Purchase Order. So I'm going to go to Create Purchase Order here. And then I'm going to click here where it says Create Purchase Order for selected items. And the key here is that if I click this one for selected items, it would actually allow me to automatically create the purchase order to that preferred vendor. So that's kind of the trick. That the reason why I selected the second option is because I want that preferred vendor to be the one that gets chosen by default. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. And what's great about this, now I got my contractor work order, which is basically just a purchase order that I went into the customized layout screen and I changed the name of it the same, with the same way. So because we're not really purchasing an inventory, I'm calling it contractor work order, which makes more sense. And also here on the ship to, I changed it from ship to site location because that's going to make a lot more sense when I give this to my contractor. So the great thing about the workflow here that I really didn't have to sit there and type anything. This all went straight from an estimate or from a sales order, which is the example that I use. And here's my total hourly fee now at my vendor rate. And then here under contractor material, notice I did mention, right, that if I put the dollar amount here and the rate wouldn't move over. So that's exactly what I meant. So now I can actually go on the rate and tell my contractor, let's say I agree with my contractor that I would charge the client 500, but the contractor would charge me, let's say 75% of it. So that's why I left the rate at 1, because then I can just put here 0.75 and it'll retain my original $500 number here, but in the total is 375, and this is actually what I'm gonna pay my contractor. This is a real neat thing about the workflow. I'm gonna go ahead and hit save and close, and I'm gonna hit save and close. So now I have a sales order and a purchase order both open for that job. So I'm gonna show you some really nifty reporting tricks here. I'm gonna go to reports, custom reports, and transaction detail. And then I'm going to click on here, dates, I'll click on all because I'm not really worried about that. And here where it says total, I'm going to go ahead and go total by customer. And then here where it says filters, I'm going to click on posting status, okay, because we're talking about purchase order and sales order. So anytime I'm going to show a report that is going to contain any one of these, I have to make sure that it's a non-posting transaction in this case. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And that basically shows me everything that's non-posting. But I want to, in this case, just focus on that particular job there. So I'm going to actually forgot what the job was. So let me just double check here and go to sales order and click previews. Okay, that was it. Jimenez Carter Project 11. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my report. And I'm going to click on customize report. I'm going to click on filter. Then I go down to name. And then I'm going to go down to that particular job only, right? Because this is going to be a report that basically just tracks my order. So what's really cool about this is I haven't even posted a sale. I haven't even posted an expense. And I already have basically like a profitability report per se, right? So now I kind of really do have an idea of what my total sales are going to be and what my total costs are going to be. So I find this kind of interesting. Now it depends on what I want to see. If I want to see the details or not, I would go to customize report in this case and click on filters and then go to detail level and then go to all except summary. That way I don't see that 1850 there that's kind of bothering me. That's why I hide okay. That way I only get the actual net amounts. And what's neat about this is I can actually build a report that has POs and sales orders, and I can actually have parallel profitability projections on top of the actual stuff that posts. Anyway, so these are just the two little tidbits I wanted to show you that the reasons why people still nostalgia, they still hold on to QuickBooks Desktop, because I just feel tons of confidence of what QuickBooks Desktop can do, especially on those particular areas. Last thing I want to show you, that link you see there, takes you to this spreadsheet that Woody put together, the same Woody that did the presentation. Woody put this great Google sheet where basically takes feature by feature, and it puts Pro, Premier, Enterprise, QBO, and it actually puts notes to delineate what's different, and it puts an X, if that feature is available or if it's not available. So I strongly recommend you print that out. And if you're a QuickBooks consultant or somebody that's recommending QuickBooks and people are asking you, which version to choose, strongly consider that. There's the link right there. I'll post it on there as well. Okay. So that draws to the conclusion. Many people ask me, because I'm a big QuickBooks Desktop advocate, but I also am a QBO advocate. Does Hector recommend QBO? So this is my answer. Yes. To almost all my service-based companies, no inventory, no manufacturing, no job costing reports, no import from Excel, QBO works wonderfully. Now, why? Bank feeds automation. Woody pointed it out. Bank feeds are better in QBO. Period. No IT drama. I love my IT guy, but I prefer not to see him if I can. You can always add an app in the future if the client's needs evolve, and apps are proliferating incredibly. Great collaboration with QBO Accountant. Again, like Woody said, we can do an entire webinar on that. And cost, okay? Contrary to what most people think, QBO
to a lot of these specific clients, the ones that I'm showing you here, it's actually a much smaller overall ownership cost. And let me just break that down. When I consider the time that I spend, the reduction in time I spend as an accountant and consultant, and I am expensive. So when my client's able to reduce 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of my time because their bank feed automation is much better and faster, and not have to pay the IT guy, and not have to deal with servers and downtime due to multiple users and switching for single user and multi-user, I think that the cost is actually lower, the overall ownership cost. So, for certain situations, yep, QBO is more expensive than QuickBooks Desktop. But when you talk about multi-user and you consider all the factors, to me, and I'm experiencing it this year, the overall cost of QBO has gone down. All right, so let's talk about the CPE keyword for today. The CPE keyword today was Woody. It's Woody. So guess which is the
awesome.
one. So guess which is the one that talked to us today? The one with the hat or the one without the hat? Anyway, write that down. And Woody, I guess you're still on. Let me see if there's any questions here.
Yeah, I've been going through. There's a lot of good ones, so I'm like frantically typing. So I just want to let everybody know that check your answer by the end. Well, there's a lot of questions, so I'm just going to answer as many as I can. I should be able to get to the end by noon.
Yeah.
I did want to mention on the customization of templates, Hector, you can now import like Word doc templates into QBO. So if it was in Spanish, you could actually bring that in for your invoice.
That's still
it would inherit the language.
That's still beta, right? That's still beta QuickBooks.
It is beta. You're right. To be fair, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Woody. Okay. So there's a lot of questions. I'm not going to have chance to answer them all. So let's bring in our next guest speaker, which is Chris from Qbox. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Chris and make Chris a presenter. But let me quickly, Chris, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Hector.
So quickly, let me just set this up for you. So your Qbox is a file sharing mechanism for QuickBooks. And
that's correct.
What you see here on the screen, it's a chart that I did comparing all the different, let's call it attempts for file sharing that have been done and that are out there now. Accountant's Copy was Intuit's first try to make this work. And one of the big issues with that is sometimes there's corruption. So file sharing, like Dropbox, it was a great solution, and it wasn't designed for QuickBooks, but people started using it, and then they got corruption in different ways. So then Qbox came in, and they created this concept of locking the file and what I call turn-based. I'm a gamer. I play a lot of board games, so I use board game references. So it's this turn-based work where the accountant works, the client is locked out, the accountant finishes working, and then the client can work. And then just quickly before you jump in, Chris, people also still work with remote access. Remote access is easy. You go log me in, TeamViewer. But one of the problems with remote access is you interrupt the user. One of the solutions that Qbox solves, and also MyQuickCloud solves. And then there's also self-hosting. I have tons of clients that self-host, right? They don't have to pay a monthly fee. They can put the data on the cloud, but they have to pay heavy IT costs. They have to bring the IT guy, buy Windows Server, buy the software, spend tons of money on security. Then there is self-hosting like MyQuickCloud, and we're going to have Stephen towards the end kind of talk to us about his approach to file collaboration, which is very advantageous because the fee is very small, especially when you compare with Right Networks, which is a big QuickBooks hosting. So I think it's a very exciting time to be a consultant and be able to choose between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online and have great developers like these guys just develop technologies that enable us to make that choice wisely. So Chris, I'm going to go ahead and give you a presenter so you can walk through. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Hector. Again, my name is Chris Wise, and I'm part of our company is actually Coral Tree Tech, and our product is Qbox. And just as you mentioned, Qbox is really application-specific file sharing specific to QuickBooks. And some of the issues that folks have experienced, in fact, I always tell people when they call, will Dropbox work? Tell them do a Google search and just type in QuickBooks and Dropbox, and they'll get their answer. But some of the issues that are related to those different file sharing resources, like creation of conflicting copies and file corruption, are alleviated with some of the additional processes that we have with Qbox, including, as you mentioned, the locking process, which controls only one user making edits at any given time, at least remote user, in addition to our multi-step synchronization process that alleviates the problems related to file corruption. And actually with Qbox, they have 10 versions of the file available at all times, so if they have any issues related to the file, they can restore a previous version very simply with just a couple of clicks. But just to kind of dovetail into what you and Woody have both been talking about, really our job is just to provide another solution, or as we jokingly say, another tool for their toolbox, because the reality is the end users are all choosing or making their decision whether it's QBO or whether it's hosting or whether they want to stay on the desktop based on their specific situation, period. I mean, we can all talk about the facets or functionalities that we appreciate the most, but at the end of the day, it's really about serving the needs of the user. And so with Qbox, we absolutely know we're never going to go into a firm and take on every one of their clients, but we do know that there's a certain niche of clients that Qbox works exceptionally well for. It's very affordable, it's simple to use, and it does keep the user on the desktop. So every user has the performance of their local environment. While they're working in the file, they're truly working on a locally hosted file using the desktop version of QuickBooks. And so the actual synchronization process doesn't happen until they're done working and they close the file. So just really, there's a number of folks that just don't want to work through a browser, whether it's QBO or hosted. But again, everybody kind of has their own reasons why they're choosing one solution or another, and our job is just to help accountants and bookkeepers out with a solution for those folks that genuinely want to stay on the desktop for whatever reason that is. So I just shared my screen, and essentially, again, when you're accessing files through Qbox, you are running a file right from your local desktop, and we do give you a simplified window, which again, I'm going to give you a very abbreviated version. I know Hector's going to provide information on how you can sign up for a webinar or a demo on your own if you're interested. But just to give you a quick snapshot, what you're seeing on screen right now is what we call the Qbox Explorer. And essentially, it's a single access point for accountants or bookkeepers or end-user clients. We also have a number of end-user business owners that are buying Qbox on their own as well. But basically, you have this single access point to get to any one of the clients or shared users that you're using Qbox to interact with. So as you can see here, and again, just a quick, not to beat a dead horse, but this directory, again, is residing right in my local environment. So when I'm opening a file, I'm truly opening a local instance of that file. But basically, if you want to access a specific client, you click on their shared folder. Within the shared folder, you have the QuickBooks file. By initializing it from here, just like initializing any other local QuickBooks file, it's going to initialize the file itself. It's also going to initialize the appropriate version of the QuickBooks program. So once we enter our password for the QuickBooks file, it's going to open up the file, and then at that point we're going to see our first Qbox related prompt, which is going to be the lock request. And the locking process, again, is basically what controls only one user making edits to the file at any given time. In actuality, while the file is locked, the other users can still open the file and view transactions and even run reports, which a number of our accountants and bookkeepers actually use that functionality. However, again, once that file is locked, if we went back to our Qbox Explorer for just a moment, you'll see that this lock icon has appeared with my email address as the person that's actually locked the file at this particular window of time. So again, other users are immediately made aware that the lock is not available. They have the alternative to open the file and read only if they want, again, to view transactions or run reports. But again, they are immediately aware before they even attempt to open the file. If they happen to open it without noticing that lock icon, they're also notified by Qbox that the lock's currently not available. We do now have the ability for multi-users within the local area network. They can work on a common file through Qbox. The same process works with regards to remote shared users. So whenever everyone in that local area network is done working, those updates or changes are then synced to the remote users, and so they then have access to the file as well. But just again, because again I know we're a little bit pressed for time, the way that you then update, again, I just opened a single user file here, the way that I would then update my shared users with the changes or updates that I've made and also release the lock is to simply close the company file or just close QuickBooks altogether. And once I do that, then you'll notice that if you keep your eye on the icon where we started a moment ago, in about 3 to 5 seconds, Qbox is going to initialize the process of syncing the updates or changes that I've made to that file. And essentially what it's doing is it's comparing the copy that we keep in the cloud to my local desktop copy and identifying any changes or updates that I made. You can see it just changed color there. And it's going to synchronize just those incremental changes up to the cloud and then down to the desktop of my shared users, which is another advantage of Qbox that accountants and bookkeepers like. You can actually open and work in a file at any time, regardless of whether your shared users are turned on at that moment or not. If their computer happens to be shut down, those changes are appended to the cloud, and the next time that remote user starts their computer, Qbox will automatically ping the cloud and pull down any edits or updates that were made while their computer was shut down before they even begin to work. So that just gives, again, an accountant or a bookkeeper a lot of flexibility in when and how they access the file. And just to kind of finish up, while the file is synchronizing, which normally takes anywhere from 30 to 30 seconds to a couple of minutes, you can still actually open up another program on your local computer. You can even open up another file within Qbox and lock it and begin working. You don't have to obviously sit and watch and wait while it's taking place. So again, that's another benefit. You're not relying or subject to your internet performance or lack thereof. You're able to actually work on the file at any given time. And the only thing that's affected by the performance of your internet is actually the synchronization of those incremental changes that are now being updated to the cloud. So again, once that process completes, which we'll finish up with that, because again, I want to allow MyQuickCloud some time. Once that synchronization process is finished, then Qbox is going to automatically notify us that change has been done, or those updates have been synced to the cloud. It's going to let us know that the lock's been released, and then we'll also automatically see this lock icon disappear from our Qbox Explorer. So again, just a very simple process for sharing a file with a remote user, a QuickBooks Desktop file. In fact, I always jokingly, I'll end with this. Whenever I get a call or we get a call from an accountant or bookkeeper that says, oh, by the way, I've got this Joe client that's just not super tech savvy, we smile and say, well, great, they're going to love Qbox because it's very easy to use. And again, for those folks that want to stay on their desktop, that maybe have POS integration, they don't want to work through a browser, or they just, for whatever reason, they want to choose desktop, Qbox is a great solution to simplify that collaboration process.
Awesome, Chris.
So that was my,
I'm going to go ahead and launch a polling question. And Chris, you will not believe the amount of questions I'm typing here like crazy, trying to answer every question here. People are asking about, what about Dropbox? And I answered, hey, Dropbox corrupts files. This is probably the reason why you did this in the first place, right? I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for a minute so people can request more information from Dropbox. And, Chris is not going to spam you or anything like that. He'll just send you all the information, the pricing. So please go ahead and answer that. Meanwhile, let me unmute Steven because Dropbox is file sharing, and people are asking me if Dropbox is that hosting, and Dropbox is not hosting. Dropbox is file sharing. Dropbox gives you the desktop experience, but the client and the accountant work in different terms. So you have to, with both technologies, you have to sacrifice something. The only thing you sacrifice with Qbox is working at the same time as your client. That's the only thing you sacrifice, but you get all of the desktop speed experience, right? Having the file locally with all your tools, with your version of QuickBooks, all of that. Steven, can we test your audio? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. And people obviously love Qbox, and Chris is a great presenter. And thank you, Chris, for doing that great presentation. So, so let's talk to us about the concept of the difference between file sharing and self-hosting.
Right. So MyQuickCloud is self-hosting. Well, first of all, hi, I'm Steven Slayton. I'm head of business development here at MyQuickCloud. I'm currently in London. We have our head office here. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about self-hosting. Self-hosting is quite different. It's not a log me in, it's not a team viewer, it's not managed hosting, and it's not really file sharing. It kind of fits right in the middle of all of those concepts where we allow a PC to enable multiple users to connect in and work on certain programs at the same time without disrupting anyone's session. So it's quite different in the sense that it doesn't take over a PC. So QuickBooks users love it because as an accountant, you can connect into various people's clients' QuickBooks and work on them all at the same time. And it's pretty much inputting data onto what we call the host computer. And I'll go through a demo of exactly what I mean by host computer. But basically what it is on the client side, you enable that computer to allow for the multiple users to connect in, and that makes that the quote-unquote host. It kind of takes place of a server. So when you input data, no QuickBooks versions have to be on your remote device. All you do is have the MyQuickCloud software, and you will embed input data directly into the QuickBooks that's on your client side. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. If I can go ahead and share my screen. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet. Let me go ahead and share your screen, Stephen. And yeah, for sure, a demo would be nice.
Sure.
Okay, there you go. You should be able to share your screen now.
All right. Can you see it?
Not yet. Now I can.
All right. So this is a basic setup by an accountant. And what this is this is a MyQuickCloud dashboard. So on this computer that I'm on right now, I have no versions of QuickBooks on this computer. But as you can see, I've got 3 versions that I have access to. Now, these are 3 different clients that a typical accountant would have. And then I also have a virtual session that I want to have access to my office computer in my office. So let's say, and as you can see, I've got 3 different versions, and I can connect with one click into my client's version of QuickBooks and input data. So let's say I just want to click into Jay's Construction, a construction company, and say I'm on site, on a construction site, and I'd like to access the office computer where the QuickBooks client file is held and get some invoices off that. So basically, I connect directly into the office. Like I said, the QuickBooks desktop version is not on this computer, but I'm remoting into the home office. And this will not disrupt the computer where QuickBooks is on. The guy on the other side can continue on working on QuickBooks or any other program on the computer. So if I click on Customers, and I want to print out an invoice, just click on the invoice. And people ask me all the time, okay, you can get the information, you can get the invoice, but can you print? So this is an interesting thing about MyQuickCloud and QuickBooks, is that if you see the redirected, what that means is that any bit of hardware that's where I am on site right now is redirected to me. So I can print on site, or if it doesn't say redirected, that's the printers or hardware based in the office where the host computer is. So I can print on both sides. So if I had a construction company that had 10, 15 guys in the field and they want to print out invoices wherever they are, they can do so either at the office or on site. And that's just one feature that kind of works with MyQuickCloud and QuickBooks. And I'm sure with you QuickBooks experts out there, there are many more. But I just wanted to show you a simple function that works. Now, this is a single application mode, these 3 right here. And what I mean by that is that clients don't want you to kind of see the different files on their computer. They want you to come in and work on just what they want you to work on, which is QuickBooks. So they can configure it very easily, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, that they can say, I just want Stephen as the accountant to see QuickBooks. And this is exactly what it does. So, and I can work on different versions. So I can work on QuickBooks Enterprise on one client, and then I can work on QuickBooks Premier on another client at the same time, since none of this is based on my computer. So this is very handy for accountants, so they can work from their office, from anywhere, on different versions of QuickBooks, and all the data is inputted directly in the host computer again. There's no syncing, no downloading, it's all in real time. Now, if I want to use the private virtual desktop mode, I can click on this. If I want to see my private desktop based in my office, I can do that. So now I have access to all my programs and files. And again, if someone, a colleague, an assistant, whoever, is at my office working on my computer, it's not going to disrupt their session. I'm not going to see what they're doing. They're not going to see what I'm doing. This is a completely separate session that our technology allows you to do. So this is the virtual private desktop mode. And then so this is the difference between single application and private desktop. And you can share either. So how hard is this to use? We developed this product to make it for an accountant or a small business owner to use it as easy as possible. So from here, this is the Settings tab, and from the MyQuickCloud perspective, I can do different things. I can create users very easily. So if I wanted to create a user, I can create new, simply type in a username and password for them, their name and email address, and then they can now be a user connecting into whatever programs I give them permission to. I can also edit their information. So if I want to delete the user, I can do that. If I want to change their password, I can do that, or their email address. You don't have to call the company to change passwords. You don't need to deal with support. You can do that all yourself very easily. And then say I'm the construction company, and I want to change permissions for my accountant. I can simply click on the user. And if I say I only want to give Stephen access to just my QuickBooks, so I can unclick these. These are all based on the host computer. Click Next. And now, in real time, now Stephen only has access to QuickBooks, my QuickBooks, and that's it. So it's a very easy tool to use. It's, like I said, it's not a try me, go to my PC, TeamViewer, anything like that. It's not managed hosting. It sits right in the middle, a very affordable way to share and work on QuickBooks at the same time.
Okay, so one of the questions was, does a computer need to be on for us to access it remotely? And the answer is yes, because this is essentially you're taking one of your computers and making it a server. Another question that I see here is they're asking, well, what is the difference between having MyQuickCloud and having remote desktop server? And so remote desktop server is using Windows Server licensing, which is a little bit expensive and a little bit harder to get IT people. That means more expensive IT people are going to be required to configure a remote desktop connection. So what MyQuickCloud does is it really simplifies the ability to pick and choose which applications you want to share, and it's not limited to QuickBooks. This actually works, as you saw in his example. This can work on Excel, it can work on Word, it can work on any really type of data. Obviously, for today's purpose, we're focusing on the QuickBooks. And Stephen, I think we got your audio back on. Can you speak? Stephen, so I wanted to put another keyword question there just to see if you wanted to receive more information about MyQuickCloud or the advisor program. So I'm putting the polling question up there. And I don't know if you could hear me while your audio was out for a little bit. There was questions about how many concurrent users could you have logged into QuickBooks? Do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. So it depends on kind of your computer and how many users and how heavy of use they are. We suggest, and we typically find between 5 and 7 is about the most, and that's where we find most of our small and medium businesses and small accountancy firms fit. So they're usually in the 3 to 5 range, and that's perfectly fine. So if you have 5 to 7 connecting in at the same time, that's perfectly all right. Okay. But also our self-hosting package layers onto Windows Server. So if you have Windows Server on at your desk, or I'm sorry, at your office, you can put self-hosting onto Windows Server, and we have clients that have 30 to 40 concurrent users on that as well.
Okay. Now, if you were to compare remote desktop, I did a quick explanation, but having your own Windows Server, and spending, and making the investment into a Windows Server with multiple remote desktop to MyQuickCloud, how would you compare that?
So, yeah, if you
yeah, your audio is getting cut back off.
Okay. I'm going to email me.
Yeah, it's still cutting off a little bit. Anyway, we still have, we have about 65% of the people viewing, and we had 600 people in the webinar today that requested more information, Stephen. So what I'll do is, you'll have their contact information, and maybe help them, get set up with MyQuickCloud, help them set up with a free trial or something like that, because it looks like the audio is really getting cut off. Anyway,
absolutely, yeah. So just I had an advisor link on there, so just contact us and we will set up. We have a special program for everyone that attended this QuickBooks Power Hour. So please
absolutely.
shoot me an email.
Right. So we're going to send an email to everybody that attended today with a link to that, a link to your website, to Chris's website, the PowerPoint slides, and we're finally going to go ahead and get wrapped up. So I would like to say thank you for everybody that attended. Thank you for Stephen for attending all the way from England. And thank you, Woody. Thank you very much for being part of QB Power Hour. And Chris, also, thank you for attending. And I wish all the attendees the best of day. Log into our Facebook group and continue the conversation there. Until 2 weeks from now, thank you very much.
Have a good one. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.